Good morning, or good afternoon actually. Just when you thought I was back for good. No, unfortunately I have a cold. I had to go get a COVID test, which came back negative, but I have to self-isolate until I am well again, so as not to spread my germs around to other people. So obviously I'm not here today. We're going to continue on with overnutrition, looking specifically at diabetes. So we finished off on Friday here. So you understand the symptoms and the cause of diabetes. So now it's about how can you manage it. And the main ways that you manage diabetes is through lifestyle changes. An increase in physical activity will help with the management of diabetes because it increases the amount of muscle in your body which needs glucose in order to function, which means that you've got more glucose coming into your cells rather than staying in your bloodstream, which is the main issue with diabetes. Losing weight is also a really good lifestyle change. Adipose tissue, which is fat tissue, actually inhibits some of the absorption of glucose into your cells with insulin. They basically coat the cells and make it more difficult for those receptors that we talked about last week in the video, allowing essentially the key to open the door to let the glucose in. Limiting alcohol will also just in general give you good health. Stop smoking as well. A reduction of blood pressure and a management of this term GI of foods. Now, some of you are probably wondering, what is GI? I'm glad you asked. So, GI stands for Glycemic Index, and this is an index on a scale of 0 to 100, and it refers to the way that blood glucose responds to carbohydrate-rich foods. So remember that you've got 3 macronutrients. You've got carbohydrates, which their most basic form, which is a monosaccharide, is glucose. When you ingest food, your body digests it, and all of the carbohydrates in the food are broken down into glucose, as well as the other 2 sugars. But digestion is breaking that food down into its building blocks. So the glycemic index refers to how much glucose you get in your bloodstream when your body breaks down and digests that food. Now, we have a somewhat blurry graph. Sorry, I didn't realize it was actually going to be blurry, of high GI versus low GI foods. So if we have a look at the 2 axes, we have time on the x-axis and we have blood glucose levels. This refers to how much glucose is in your blood as a result of digesting carbohydrates. We notice that there are 2 lines in which the consumption and digestion of carbohydrates will impact your blood glucose levels. Things like basmati rice, vegetables, lentils, pasta, whole grain bread, oats and oranges will give you a very steady and slow rise of glucose into your bloodstream as a result of digestion. Okay, this green line here. Whereas foods like chips, biscuits, cakes, ice cream, dates, jasmine rice, potatoes, processed food, watermelon and white bread will give you a very short, sharp spike. So a lot of glucose is being digested and then a very quick drop in that blood glucose. Now, the red line is what we call a high GI food. Okay, it has a high glycemic index rating in that it releases a lot of glucose very quickly, whereas a low glycemic index food releases that glucose through digestion in a slower amount of time. So if we have a look here, I've got a nice little table for you. We have a high GI, which has a rating of over 70, which means that we see a rapid increase in blood glucose or blood sugar levels, okay? We have medium GI, which has a rating of 56 to 69, which means a moderate increase. And then we have low GI, which is less than 55, and that's a slow increase in blood sugar levels. So if we move back to our graph, low GI foods, high GI foods. So if we are wanting to reduce the glycemic index of foods, and this is very important for diabetics because we want to reduce the amount of blood sugar, blood glucose, and what we want to avoid is the red line, because people with diabetes already have an issue about getting glucose into their cells. Okay, so we want to release as little glucose over time as possible. In the same way that if you've ever been to the Apple store in Rundle Mall, there's only ever so many people in the store, and there's usually a massive line outside. That's a similar concept to this idea of limiting over time, like a trickle effect, in comparison to trickling out a bucket of water into a tank in comparison to dumping out the whole bucket very quickly. We want a slow release in comparison to a fast release because cells are limited in their ability to absorb glucose, which means it stays in the bloodstream, and we know that that's not good. So if you want to lower your glycemic index, and that's done by picking different types of food, it's as simple as swapping out what is originally a high GI food, like white bread, for a low GI food. So white bread for whole grain bread, a fruit muffin for actual real fruit, jasmine rice for al dente pasta. Now, I think when we discussed carbohydrates back at the very beginning of the term, I talked about complex versus simple carbohydrates. I'm hoping you can remember that. Complex have more fiber, whereas simple have more sugar. It's the same concept. White bread is a simple carbohydrate because it's had all of the fiber removed, whereas whole grain bread is a complex carbohydrate because it still contains all of that seedy, fibery goodness. In the same way that the fruit muffin would be made up of white flour, which is a simple carbohydrate, pieces of dried fruit, which tend to be a bit more sugary, in comparison to a real piece of fruit, which has all the peel on it, which we know is where the fiber is, so it's going to have a more complex structure in terms of its carbohydrates. Now, you're actually going to have a practice of doing this in a minute, okay? So, your activity is to pick your favorite meal and make it diabetes friendly. There is a task sheet attached to DayMap with instructions about what you need to do. It should take you the remainder of the lesson, and I'd like you to upload it to DayMap so that I can see how you work today, please. So hopefully by the end of today's lesson, you'll be able to describe the cause, symptoms, and management of diabetes, and you can modify recipes to make them more suitable for diabetics. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to go through the task sheet. Rather than assume you know what you're doing, I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to pause the recording for a second. So the task is dealing with diabetes. You want to swap it. So you need to find the recipe for your favorite meal. This could be spaghetti bolognese. It could be smashed avocado on toast, whatever, right? You're going to Google that. So find the recipe and then you're going to go to this website here. And you're going to swap out as many of the ingredients in your original favorite meal for low GI alternatives without ruining the intention of the recipe. So if you, for example, have spaghetti bolognese as your original recipe, you'll put in all the ingredients for spaghetti bolognese here. Then you're going to go to the website, and here I'll actually follow the link to show you what it looks like. Oh, there we go. What? Why is it not? It was a fail and a half. Okay. Right. So scroll down. You want to accept here. What will you swap? So choose a food. So here, maybe you want to swap out pasta, right? So click pasta, and then it's got potato, gnocchi, rice pasta, and try durum wheat pasta cooked al dente. So you can make another swap. So again, pick which food. Say grains. So, and this is as simple as you do it, okay? So I think it looked a bit different the other day, but when I was looking through here, you're more than welcome to kind of navigate around this website and have a look. But the idea is that it's hard to find the glycemic index of food, but so this website has removed that barrier by just telling you how to swap things, okay? And they've got like here a whole bunch of different examples, like your brown rice, low GI, your clever rice, which is by sun rice. A lot of them now are low GI, which I don't think is, you don't have to be diabetic to consume low GI. I think if we're reducing or having a slow, steady burn of glucose into our bloodstreams, that's probably a good thing. So that's what I'd like you to do, and I would like you to justify how you think it'll still work for your recipe. So good luck with that one. Please submit it to DayMap when you are done.